Let's welcome our guest is Dr. Wisdom Enang, a senior energy consultant and analyst. Good morning. So glad to have you.
Good morning. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, Olumide.
Yes, good morning. So glad to join us. You jumped in at the nick of time. We were just discussing about the NIN and why it has not been successful in stemming kidnapping. Do you have any thoughts on why?
I mean, for me, I think the NIN, I mean, it's just one of those numbers that we have seen in Nigeria that we've used, but we haven't quite integrated in the way that we use that information to solve crimes. I mean, we have the NIN, we have the BVN. What else do we have? I think we also have people that have international passports and all of that. But I think the lack of integration to solve problems, the lack of sharing of that information with the requisite intelligence agencies is another problem. There's a very big bureaucracy across the various ministries when it comes to how they handle and they share information to aid the solving of crime. So it's not just enough to have the information, it's whether or not you're able to use that information in a way that would enable intelligence to be able to solve a crime. I think that's the key thing.
But if I may ask, if BVN was successful, why isn't NIN so successful?
I mean, think about it. BVN is successful to the banking population, but then there's a very huge unbanked population. So it's a relative success. However, the NIM seems to be, we seem to be looking at it across board, banked or unbanked population, but the resistance is usually in the unbanked population because, I mean, if someone has a bank right now and has an NIN, they obviously would have a BVN. So, I mean, there's no worries. But what about those people in the villages? There's really that reluctance. The second thing is just the hurdle to get these things.
Yes.
To get a BVN, you probably walk into your bank, the enrollment is not as difficult, or you always know that, okay, I can go in here and do the enrollment. Maybe not at a time where it is quite, there's a lot of queue. You can plan your time, and you know the bank will always be there, and the networks will be there for you to enroll. But if you go to an NIN center, it's a huge mess. Sometimes you want to get enrolled on the NIN, and you find out that there's either no network, and even when you do, you don't get the physical cards. I mean, I have had that challenge myself. I've not gotten my physical card despite applying severally. So I think it's just that there's that reluctance from people just because of the stress it takes. And the BVN is more straightforward. You go there, you apply, it's almost generated within 48 hours or thereabout. The NIN, you have to follow up. So people are not just bothered. I think the same thing applies to why you ask why people are less willing to go and do their voter register for some people. They're just like, okay, what's the point? The stress that we have to go through to even get registered and then come and queue up and then vote and then perhaps try and make it count is one of the things that creates that reluctance.
Let me draw your attention to this other story on the front page of the Punch. It says, Atiku Afenifere knock police as court remands human rights lawyer Farotimi. Just a little background, yeah? Farotimi was arrested on Monday by police from Ekiti State and brought to Ado-Ekiti for arraignment and is facing charges of defamation of character stemming from his book, Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. In the book, Farotimi alleged, among other things, that prominent lawyer Are Afe Babalola, senior advocate of Nigeria, compromised the Supreme Court. This particular issue has social media upside down, I'm telling you. It's been talked about left, right, center. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I mean, I haven't followed the issue personally, but, I don't know whether or not he crossed the line in terms of being airing his own opinion, and whether there are things that perhaps he may need to, I want to say out. The courts, right, traditionally shouldn't be a place of death sentence. It should actually be a place where people go there and you're being requested to share. If there are things that you've said and you need to substantiate to prove yourself innocent, I think that's where to go straight. And I think if he has any substance to back up what he had alluded to in his write-up, I don't see a problem there. I don't see people say, "Oh, he's been arrested." The reverse will happen. So I think I don't know the particular insights into the case, but at the same time, I also know that people have the right to their opinions, but at the same time, there are also consequences if you pass a certain boundaries when airing those rights.
Yeah.
All right. I would like to also bring your attention to another interesting story from the Guardian newspaper. It says NNPCL faults Falana, insists Port Harcourt refinery producing fuel. I don't know what I've asked you before. There has been this controversy whether or not Port Harcourt refinery is in full operation, and NNPCL is faulting Falana, which means Falana must have faulted or must have criticized whether or not the refinery is working. What's your thoughts on this?
The NNPCL Port Harcourt refinery has been one deja vu. It's either it's coming up, it's going down, it's going to be a refinery, it's going to be a blending plant of what. But it is only them that know what exactly is going on, because we've heard all sorts of stories. We've heard that today they're planning it to be a blending plant. We've also heard that the inventory that was evacuated to some trucks a couple of days ago was evacuated. Those were dead stock that were stuck in their system for a while. So we do know that, there's really nothing the public can really dig deep and say this is the difference. Falana has asked questions and they've come to fault, but then what is the evidence to back up their own position? I haven't seen that. It's just all talk. So to be honest, Olumide, it's difficult to comment about NNPC's matter because they always would have, I think they tend to have more public affairs and legal experts than they have engineers that would solve Nigeria's energy problems. I typically just wait and see. That's a wait and see approach is what I deploy when it comes to NNPCL.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to ask another follow-up question. A lot of money has gone into this particular refinery, billions of naira, and till today we do not know whether it's running or not. What do you think the anti-graft agency shouldn't they step into this at this point to see what is really happening? Billions of naira have gone into it, not just this administration, the past administration. Until now, nothing. Since January, we've been promised since January it would kickstart. January became March, April, September, December. Don't you think the anti-graft agency and other agencies should step into it? Don't you think the Senate should also step into this to see what is really happening?
Definitely, I do feel that there should be some sort of interest from various groups. But again, who's going to sanction that? Remember, everything in Nigeria is all about the political interest. Sometimes you find out that the people that should sanction this do not want to for certain reasons. Perhaps maybe not to stall the pace of activities that is going on there, or for obvious reasons. And we've seen this time and time without number. We've seen. It's just what you say is just like asking me, okay. We've seen some vessels turn up and they're taking bunker fuel. Why don't we investigate them? Why do we blow them up? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know why that happens, but my thoughts are the people that should sanction this, the people that should make that decision, obviously have not made it, and that's why it hasn't happened. The anti-grafts don't just wake up on their own accord to go do those things. They could do, but the truth is that when you're now doing something that is counterproductive, to the interest of the political elites. You may run into trouble. So, I mean, that's just the truth. They could really do it. And the truth is that Nigerians would like to really know what's going on there, especially with the repeating term that has gone on over the years. But yes, Olumide, it's an unfortunate situation. Political will is not there to carry on such investigations.
All right, you said Nigerians would really like to know what's happening. This particular issue too makes you want to scratch your head, I'm telling you. It's on the front page of the Punch. It says, fuel imports hit 2.3 billion liters despite local production. What exactly is going on? Why do we have a Dangote refinery and we still have more and more of fuel importation? What are your thoughts on this matter?
I don't know, to be honest. I have no idea, because for me, I'm thinking, is there a logical reason to the importation, or is it that the Dangote refinery isn't giving the right price point to Ipman? Because I have to say Ipman, because Ipman are probably the biggest distributors in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why? But at the point, I think they actually just were able to resolve that. So my question is whether or not there is some set or some quota of the nation that is still relying on imported fuel. I don't know. I mean, I wish that data could have told us who is importing, and then we can understand why. Because unless we understand who, we cannot understand why that's going on.
Mm.
All right, let's take this one. Of course, you are aware of these tax reform bills, and now the Senate has bowed to pressure, suspending the hearing, and they are also meeting with the Attorney General of the Federation. But I would like to ask, do you see this bill coming into fruition? Do you think it will be totally withdrawn, or it might be brought back amended?
Now, I think it's going to be passed. They're just going to listen to a few, discussions from the stakeholders, the governors, and then say, okay, this is where we did this percentage, we're going to drop it to this percentage, and where we did this, we're going to amend it to this. I don't see the fact that we'll completely ignore it. I think, for me, it's a bill that is not just about revenue generation for the government. It's more of a bill that is meant to create a value system for our economy. And again, it is the winner takes it all. The more you can make your economy stimulate growth, the better for you. So I think it's one of those things that I feel is going to set the right imperatives from a political standpoint. So enough of people getting into office because they feel entitled, they don't know anything, they just want to be, quote unquote, a governor without knowing what it takes or having the discipline. Those are going to reflect in your scorecard from an IGR's perspective. So
okay.
I personally like the bill because I feel it is a direct reflection of whatever you do. There's no hiding behind the scene and waiting for Big Brother to send you money. It is either you sit up, choose the right leaders, or you get hungry. I would have loved it, to be honest. I think we've got to come to a point where we match causes, actions, and consequences. People make choices based on certain causes, and they take those actions, and there's got to be consequences economically to reflect that, yes. So this, it's not really hiding behind a bubble, an economic bubble, or hiding behind the federal government's support to go on and live a very reckless life. So I liked it personally, and I feel if you reject, then it will be passed.
Okay, let's take a look at this statement coming from the police. It's on the front page of the Daily Trust. It says, Lakurawa responsible for Zamfara explosion. Lakurawa is the new terrorist group. Now, my question will be to you, how would you have security operatives handle this terrorist group? But for starters, though, if you remember how Boko Haram started, how it became a monster, Hydra-headed. Its leader was killed, its founder was killed by the then Olusegun Obasanjo administration, and then it just blew out of proportion. And so across board, some sections though, analysts were saying probably killing the leader made him a martyr and made the movement bigger. So my question to you then is, how would you rather have this administration handle this new terrorist group?
Okay, I mean, I think first and foremost, there needs to be some sort of covert intelligence to know what those terrorist groups are after, what drives their ideology. And I typically think that one of the things that I would do if I was the president would be to look at, can we, where they have their stronghold now, can we have a command base very, very much there to put them in check? And the command base would also include the rights. I mean, there's an order to neutralize if they pose any threats to the public. Because I think part of why Boko Haram had escalated very badly was because at some point, I think the President Goodluck Jonathan was quite calm about handling their case. I mean, even when there were direct orders that, look, these guys are in a secluded area of Sambisa, and it's, to me, right, there were generals that I've seen in the Nigerian, as head of state that would have just dropped a bomb there and taken them all out.
Yes, like Obasanjo.
Of course. But Jonathan just wanted to take the gentleman way out, and it escalated very, very badly. I mean, during his time. So, but and sincerely, I feel that was, it sent several signals, and then, of course, there was sabotage as well within the military system, right, that creates those things. You hear these things a lot. So the three steps I would take, the first one would be to make sure that we have very good intelligence on these folks. Second one, I'll put a command base right next to their door. It's like saying, we are not coming for peace and we are coming for peace enforcement. So you either sit up, disband, or you guys sit up. Then the second thing is, I'll be very particular about who is deployed to go face those guys. And it's really important because even when the US want to deploy for some sort of jobs, you hear things like SEAL 6, Team 6, and all of that from the SEAL, US SEAL. And those are elite groups. They are trained for specialist jobs. I feel because if you don't do that, if you take just an ordinary person, those guys get compromised with money. And at the end of the day, they will end up selling your strategy and even weapons to the enemy and feed them to grow. So I think it is important for us to take a very tactical approach to the new terrorist group.
All right, thank you very much. Now, also, if I might come in, I remember there was an interview, Zamfara State Governor, when he was interviewed about this terrorist, he made some certain bold statement. He said the government knew this terrorist. They know their hideout. They know where they stay. They know everything. But when asked why the government had not done anything, he said they are trying their best. According to him, he said the armies are trying their best. So, so my question is, do you think this present government have the political will to go after this terrorist? I mean, with all these points, with all these solutions you've talked about, do you think there is the political will to go after this terrorist and neutralize them?
I think the first thing is, do they have the moral will be the right question to ask. Because the moral will say, for example, if you find yourself in a situation, maybe even in a corporate setting, and there's nothing that you have in a compromise with a colleague or maybe a subordinate, you can easily tell them off and say, look, I don't like what you're doing. But it's difficult if there's something compromising that you feel that you guys share in common and you cannot have that right or the moral standard. So it all goes down to how we run our politics, right? A lot of these groups come out because people arm them and use them for political, rascality. And at the end of the day, those guys metamorphose into some sort of, extremists and on a religious basis, and then begin to cause their own mayhem. Some people even sponsor them as religious extremists for their own political reasons as well. So, it all comes down to the question, first, does the government have the moral will? How far have they gone in bed, quote unquote, with those guys, and how can then do they have the moral standing to come out and challenge those guys? That's the first question. Then the second question is, do they have the political will? The political will would then talk about, okay, do they have the strategy? Do they have uncompromised military guys who have the mindset that they will go there and do their jobs? Because if you just send people that are already compromised, I mean, the objective function changes. Let me give you an example. I'm not saying this is the case, but if you have a military that really wants that conflict to continue, or a conflict, or wants to fund the terrorist group, for example, let's just say that was the case, a military of that nature, some people will benefit from it because there will always be money put towards buying weapons, and somebody's going to gain from it. So I think at the end of the day, the government also needs to look at how can we sensitize or do a social orientation for our military people to and also create a commercial enough commercial incentive to make them want to do their job and execute it in a very clinical and judicious and ethical manner. Because at the end of the day, if people are underpaid and their risks are high, the chances of compromise are very high as well. So Olumide, it's a lot of things. And you look at, I've never spoken to some of the armies out there that are taking similar risks like the Nigerian army, and hear their salaries. You'll be amazed how well they're paid. No wonder some of them are not easy to compromise. But even at that, there's still some compromises out there. So we need to look at their welfare as well. The risk, the welfare, and also the strategy. What I will even do, I dare to say, I'll do a rotational system. Not just a system where one general goes out there to face those guys and stays there for, about 2 years, and God knows if they get compromised. I'll probably be changing the generals that are in that place every 6 months. One, to inject new breath of fresh air. Two, to make sure that any chance of compromise is not possible, because by the time you spend 6 months, even when you are getting to know them, before you get compromised, I've brought a different person.
All right, I think that's a safe place to land. Thank you very much, Dr. Wisdom Enang. You have been very brilliant. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that was Dr. Wisdom Enang, senior energy consultant and analyst, giving his. I like how he really broke down the whole, going after terrorists and all that. But like he said, moral will, political will. Do we actually have this too?
Yeah, but he also talked about welfare. You must take care of these people, the foot soldiers.
Do you think? I think if you look at the budget, the budget directed to security. Security actually took a lot in the 2024 budget.
Yeah, but we've had cases of soldiers who say they are not going to go fight because they've not been paid, or they are underpaid, or they don't have the right equipment and all of that. Mutiny is what's called. Yeah, we've had cases of that in the past, but well, not recently. But welfare though is key.
I think that's one of the things he said was that change the generals. I like that. Yeah. Change the generals every 5 to 6 months if possible. Keep on changing the generals. because you can't get a different approach if you keep on doing the same thing. So, these are some of the things that he said. But this is what we can take, or as much as we can take on the newspaper review. So we're going on a short break. And when we come back, we'll return shortly.